City Council meeting and Planning Commission joint general meeting. It is June 10th, 2025. It is 6:09 p.m. Separate it. 6:09 p.m. We will start with an invocation by Councilmember Brittany Bills, and I'll lead you in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Our dear, kind, gracious Heavenly Father, we're so grateful for the opportunity we have tonight to get together and talk as friends and neighbors about our great city and what we can do to make it better. We're grateful for this beautiful weather and for everything that we've been given, and ask that we can have thy spirit with us tonight as we discuss these important issues, that we can have understanding and kindness towards each other. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen. Amen. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We do have a couple of consent items that we need to approve before we move in further in our meeting. We do have a consent item number 1A, which is approval of the meeting minutes from March 12th, and consent item number 1B, which is approval of the meeting minutes from April 8th, 2025. Those are both joint City Council Planning Commission meetings. Is there further discussion, or do I have a motion on that?
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt the consent agenda.
Okay. Have a motion by Doug.
I'll second it.
And a second by Ron. We will do a roll call on this just to make sure we have everyone. So we'll start over here with you, Scott.
Yes.
Brittany.
Yes.
And you, Jerry.
Yes.
Ron.
Yes.
Chris.
Yes.
Wes.
Yes.
And Doug.
Yes.
That passes unanimously. We'll now move in right to what we're here for. Is we have item number 2A, which is general plan land use. We appreciate some of those residents that are here to kind of join with us. Hopefully we'll have a couple more that will be here. This is going to be a great discussion. We'll turn the time over to you, Rob, to kind of start leading that, and I know we have others that will be doing some of the part of the presentation.
I don't have much to add other than to turn it over to our consultants. We've talked about land use twice now regarding the general plan. So first time, and then recently last month, and now part 2.5, I guess. So we have Sam here, and also Fred.
If you're somebody that might not be aware, Fred Philpotts from the LRB, who does different studies and things. So.
Yeah, and I asked Fred to be here this evening specifically to speak to economics, because that's going to be a part of our discussion. But Fred's group is doing the economic analysis as well as the moderate income housing element for the plan. So this is titled Land Use Workshop number 2. We're going to touch on economic development stuff. We're going to touch on moderate income housing tonight. It's kind of, these are all topics that have related and overlapping items. And so while this is a sort of wrap up from our discussion last time, we'll bridge into those new topics as well. Just a review on what we heard from you all last time we met. One of the biggest things that kind of emerged for me was this idea of connection. That you are a community that thrives on connection, that wants to be better connected to each other, to your families, neighbors, friends, both socially and physically, and how do we utilize the general plan to kind of promote this connection? I think that's a really great overarching theme that we're sort of discovering through these discussions. We had a few different prompts for discussion. We talked a bit about, what do you want Highland to be like for you and other families in 10 years? And the sort of core themes that emerged were to preserve the open space and rural character and retain this sort of small town identity that you all cherish about living here. And also to just improve the walkability and trail connectivity within the city. Other themes that sort of came out were, have a safe, family-oriented community, inviting public spaces and cohesive aesthetics, diverse housing options for all life stages, and a clean, self-sustaining city with strong schools and local jobs and balanced revenue through local sales and targeted commercial growth. we asked the question, what does it mean to be a family-centric community? That's something that is commonly talked about in Highland, is that this is a family-centered place. And so what does that mean to everyone here in this room? Some of the things that emerged there, that we have spaces to gather, play, and connect. We have a safe and accessible environment, and we have strong community connections. And so, both things within the actual physical realm, but also, making connections to each other through social and events and things like that.
By mentions, what does that refer to? Is it
The mentions, so we had the Mentimeter, and you got to kind of pick from choices.
Okay, got it.
Oh,
Okay.
I think you might not have been here last time, Ron.
I wasn't.
Yeah, so we used Mentimeter, and everyone kind of did a live polling thing, and the mentions are if someone hit one of the topics that was up on the screen. So these are some of the other themes that came out of that, family-centric topic. So a welcoming culture with a multi-generational appeal, affordable living and recreational access, land use and zoning that support family life, and high-quality amenities, and then balanced commercial areas that encourage community gathering. So this list is sort of the other ideas that were sort of generated, but not necessarily got all the mentions stacked on the votes, so to speak. Here's what that looked like. We asked the question, we talked a fair bit about land use as it relates to housing last time. And what sort of housing-related land use strategies should the city pursue to help Highland remain a family-centered community? And we had some good discussion around ADUs and flag lots. I think ADUs sort of emerged as like a really excellent way in which we can provide affordable options, particularly to our young starting out people and our aging community. Flag lots, not so popular, so we sort of shelved that one. We talked a fair bit about the focus on the remaining vacant areas, and so those areas that still have yet to build out, how do we want to see them change and develop, and sort of the group conversation centered around potentially allowing for some density to promote affordability, but at a scale and aesthetic that is really characteristic of Highland and represents some of the better developments that you've seen around here. And I apologize, I've forgotten the names of the examples that we pointed to. Rob can help me with that. But the one out here was one of them.
Coventry and Canterbury were the
Thank you.
ones we were kind of
Thank
looking
you.
at.
Yes.
So flag lots, you say, are not in the equation anymore?
It seems that the group felt that that was not worth putting on the table at this time.
So, Ron, what happens when that came up? There was a discussion that we felt like that when we did our survey, there was somewhat some interest in it. But as we talked through it, the planning commission, the council members that were present did not really feel that strong towards it. So
Interesting. I wasn't here because I would have voiced a different opinion. Ironically, John Curtis is on a flag lot. So it's not like flag lot. He's got a $2 or $3 million home on a flag lot. It's beautiful. It's spectacular. It's an orm. Anyway, if we're beyond it, we're beyond it. So sorry I missed.
You're okay, Ron, and I'm not sure how you'd like to approach these sort of topics, Mayor, if they come up again, if you want to spend the time to address them in this meeting.
I mean, you want to go through and we're going to come back to this, or is this the time to discuss it?
This would be the time to discuss this.
So has there been any change or feeling different amongst the council or planning commission? Now, unfortunately, our numbers are a lot lower now than what they were when we discussed it. Is it still the feeling that we focus more on ADUs than flag lots, or what's the feeling there?
Mayor, I thought we had a pretty intense discussion about this. I think we should move on. We decided use for good thing, flag lots, not so much.
I mean, I agree. We discussed. I mean, I brought up about the survey. There was some discussion on it, and it didn't
Well,
seem.
the survey showed there was an interest.
I know, and I brought that up. That's what I say. It was part of the discussion.
So
when we brought
who
it
do
up.
we represent? I mean,
I'm not sure, I'll make the same point that I made last time, which is that I'm not sure we can put a whole lot of value in that survey, because the same survey those two coexist within people's?
Well, let's eliminate flag lots, and now let's talk about affordable housing. So let's move on and talk about affordable housing now, but we've eliminated flag lots.
ADUs.
Well, ADUs is one answer, but there was actually two answers.
Pretty big answer.
I agree.
Okay, I'll carry on for now, and this will kind of evolve, I guess. There's definitely support for the age-restricted housing within the community. So, you know, as those new vacant areas kind of fill in, providing some opportunity for housing set-asides that are geared towards aging in place. And lastly, you know, mixed-use development within the town. For supporting your business community, for supporting your economic footprint. You know, in our past discussions, the first land use one we had a long while back, you know, I think what we heard kind of loud and clear from a number of folks was that, you know, you're very comfortable with the scale of commercial offerings in Highland. You're not, it doesn't seem like Highland is on a trajectory to absorb a lot of commercial growth and try and steal it away from the high-rise communities. And so, you know, our thoughts surrounding economic development have kind of been leaning now towards what are the ways in which we can support your existing commercial footprint and the businesses that are there to make sure that they're thriving and succeeding and sustainable for your community. So, and I'll say this as well, a couple of thoughts. First, the economic development element of the general plan is optional. And it may be that from the discussion tonight that, you know, the things that we come away with, some of those strategies might be specifically related to land use issues that influence economic development, but are not solely tied to business practice. Or there may be things that you really want to drill in on that are really just policy issues geared around supporting businesses. So there's sort of that difference at play. So we'll kind of craft a general plan accordingly, depending on kind of what the focus comes out of tonight is. The strategies that we're going to put out here, just as ideas, I'm going to have a little Menti poll at the end of this, these slides here, where we can talk about these more and do the voting. And I think it's important to note that many of these strategies don't necessarily stand in a vacuum. Some of them they do support one another, are interrelated, and can be tied together. So with that, the first is to kind of focus on this idea of town center. You've put an exceptional amount of effort into developing the town center that you have right now, this sort of block here around City Hall and the development that's on its flanks. One opportunity may be to expand that existing footprint and look to kind of treating this area as well as all of the Highland Mains as one cohesive town center, and sort of shaping the community narrative around that vision. A town center that is bridged across the highway as much as possible physically and can serve both sides of the community. Within that town center, can allow for mixed uses that support the desired business types that we've heard about from resident surveys and input, which tend to be really small scale, kind of the dining and the service industries and things like that. Opportunities to implement design standards that encourage high-quality development and architectural character. And then there's opportunities to invest in infrastructure improvements within this district that promote walkability and a cohesive experience. So leaning into things like wayfinding signage and streetscape treatments and other beautification measures to help enhance the experience. You've got a lot of that going on, out here in the outside of City Hall, even on the street leading into City Hall. Kind of expanding that character throughout the district and helping create a cohesive town center. Another potential strategy.
Can I ask this to ask
Oh yeah,
you?
go ahead.
They're kind of focused on this town center. We do have another commercial area that's kind of started opening up in the city over by our Ridgeview development on Canal Boulevard and 4800 West.
Yes.
That's another, and we still have, Scott, how many acres do we still have south of that area?
There's 8 acres.
There's 8 acres where Ridgeview had, but then on the other side of the canal that's in Highland City boundaries, is it 35 acres? The US,
Oh, you're talking about the USDC property?
yeah.
We've looked at that, it's somewhere between 35 and 40 acres.
I'm just saying that when we talk about commercial, that might be another area to discuss.
Yeah, and that's related to this next one here.
Okay.
In regard to the major corridors. So we had a discussion a long time back when we first talked about land use about the major corridors being opportunity areas for mixed use to occur. But I think really what kind of came out of that discussion was that could be an ideal place for additional commercial. So, and Ridgeview in particular was cited as a main area in which that could occur, the kind of frontage along there by the high school. I think there was hesitation at the time to expand commercial too heavily along Timpanogos Highway corridor in the sense that it would kind of detract from the town center and sort of pull the energy away. So there's a little bit of a balance there, but I think when we talk about targeting major corridors, there's certainly an opportunity along Timpanogos Highway and North County Boulevard for commercial expansion. But to what scale and level we want to go with that. There could be some further discussion on that.
I remember that discussion.
Right now, we're mostly hearing the Ridgeview.
Yeah, I remember that discussion. It was an important one that we don't want to ignore Highland Mains. And by focusing on all these other things, we've got the Longhorn property and we've got Ridgeview. But I think we can have both. I want to make sure that we don't close opportunities that may be available 10 years, 15, 20 years down the road because we're so focused on Highland Mains. That said, I want all the focus on Highland Mains. I want to make sure that that's there, but I don't want to close doors. Whatever we have in the general plan needs to include stages, if you will, that once Highland Mains has got everything it's needed, then we can move on to these other areas, if that makes sense.
As Ron brings up, one concern that even Highland Mains is not going to compete against is Lehigh's now announced by where the temple, there where they have 2,100 homes going in, they just now open another opening of a commercial corridor there, where they're having Whole Foods come in, where they have, and when I talked to their mayor, I said, what other things? And I go, do you think you could have some sit-down restaurants? He goes, yeah, we anticipate that. I'm going, that can actually, when we talked about hurting of Highland Mains, my fear is those who are looking there will also look at that same site. And I go, here we are worried about it, but it's our neighbors that sometimes can come and also affect artists, what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, go ahead, Scott.
As I think about it every time I drive on Timpanogos Highway, I think there's been a lot of discussion of the Longhorn property, the Johnson property, and I think there was a lot of people that really were opposed to commercial development there. But the question is going west from the elevated ministry in that there's some homes along there that are owned by UDOT. That area looks a little blighted to me.
It does.
And my question is, what can we put in the general plan for that? I mean, it's next to an older community, and I respect that, but I'm not sure it gives a bad view of Highland when you come in. Does it make sense to do some commercial there, or should we work with put more residential or fix stuff? It's kind of divided from the church, you know what I'm talking?
I do.
The church up to elevated dentistry.
The unfortunate part, UDOT owns a lot of those parcels.
Right.
And I'm not sure they're not trying to preserve if they decide to ever increase the size of Timpanogos. And so
Do we want to do this, how we make it even wider?
well, no, but I'm saying they're the landowner, they're already the landowner, they've already acquired the property.
Right.
And so it can be a little harder for us to come and say, you don't do this when they're the landowners, we're trying to work. Does that make sense? It's different if it was the individuals versus the UDOT owning it.
Right.
Is there any way that we have an influence on what UDOT does with that property? Because I agree 1,000% with Scott.
It looks blighted.
It is blighted.
It
and
is.
Those homes either are rented or they're vacant, and weeds ridiculous. So there needs to be a plan that I would hope, would have some say in what their plans are and what are they going to do in the meantime. Can they tear those down and put the rocks and the pathway in, or whatever is needed, like we have on
So-
North County Boulevard?
Let's go through your property owners. Your property owners directly to the east of the church there, the Avamore building, is actually a water district. I believe, is that Lehigh Irrigation there, or is that Jordan Valley? It's one of the irrigation districts. And so they have a water lane that goes through there, so that will be hard, but they could maybe do some landscaping. They'll go further up. I think some of those homes, there might be some private property owners just right there. But as you go further up, some of those are rentals of UDOT's.
Of UDOT's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I know on 5600 West,
But it's blighted. And
but that's UDOT that owns the home that they're renting it.
Yeah.
I will say, when we last had our last quarterly meeting with UDOT, some of the representatives were actually surprised at how many homes
We owned.
they owned there. We have a meeting with them next week, actually, and that part of their follow-ups was they were supposed to get back with us about
What
they
they-
really intend to keep those homes.
And I would hope we would have a say on what that looks like.
Yeah.
We would, before they do things, and I want, we have Christian, and Kristen, I don't want to, is it Chevrier, am I saying? Chevrier, that is here with the state, so as we talk about some of that, this is something that, it's good to have Kristen hearing, because that's she's state, and so.
Yeah, I'm interested, so I was just gonna write this down.
Yeah, so we appreciate you being here.
Kristen, I'd like your views on flag lots.
Well, actually, is that okay?
Go ahead, Kristen.
Okay, so I kind of think that if people own property and they want to put in a flag lot, I think that's sort of a private property right. And I think that we should honor that, and especially, we've got a guy over here, Mr. Turnbull. Is that what you say?
Harley
Yeah,
Turnbull.
yeah. So he's trying to put in a third house on his 3-acre lot, and he's having to gerrymander the frontage. And I think that if we were more accommodating for situations like that we could actually help with our housing shortage. Because people are trying to use their property to help their own families or whoever needs a home to have one. But if we make it too hard, then it's discouraging.
And how long is the general plan? 15 years?
No.
10?
It's recommended to update every 10.
Well, it's been 15, or it's
Yeah.
been, 14. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you for that input. Now, as we always can go pull out a parcel. One thing is you brought up Harley Turnbull. He had some options to actually go put a little road to actually get the lots.
That's extremely expensive.
But it's not our responsibility to make sure it's profitable.
Well,
That's what I'm saying, there's options, it's just if they want to do the options.
yeah.
And so, but I thought Parley had kind of worked through that. I think he'd already worked through that, at least the last time
I think there is a reasonable answer that I've heard. I've not seen it, but
He
Harley
can.
thinks there is.
But we have to always, we appreciate one resident. We've had others come in and talk about the flag lots. It's not that Parley's the only one. There's one that's over here by the white church that he asked about it. And so flag lots is not, the reason they have a hard time with flag lots is we require 130-foot frontage. What you're doing is then you're going to make a small opening and then you go, and then they go back behind a home. And so a lot of it also is, hey, do they have the frontage to also keep their lot, then to add on for another road? And so there's flag lots, like I said, that was one that we put in our modern income housing to look at that we discussed. That's why it came up. It came up earlier, and as we've heard from some council and even the time planning commission, they didn't seem to be favorably in that. I agree with what Chris is saying. It's one option to affordable housing. That's why we put it in our modern income plan, as we looked at that as an option to try to open up some of the properties, so. The ADUs, when we brought it up, we felt like that was a bigger option, meaning that would probably open up a lot more, because right now you have to be attached to the home. If you did a detached ADU, we felt like a lot of people probably could instantly go into that, because a lot of them have garages or they have different things that they could probably go into that fairly fast and it'd be more beneficial. You know, most flag lots I've seen, usually you have a really nice home sitting behind a smaller home in front. I mean, that's usually if you drive down through American Fork, they have flag lots. Usually it's a really nice home sitting in front of an older home in front. So, but it does open up some of
they
that
usually
land.
require 20 foot, so does an ADU, are we allowed to require the 20-foot access? Because that's the fire truck access.
It's
Well,
not a separate.
It's it's
Not
part
separate residence.
we didn't do it where they could go do a casita. What we talked about was doing it where
Or it has to be attached?
it's more, it does not have to be attached, it would be more of a garage
Okay.
setting. Am I thinking right, that's what we
The
talked about?
same owner, but yes.
Rob, is that what you guys kind of came out for, ADU?
Yes, we talked about that, but we also were careful.
And you limit the square
We're not going to write this so detailed in the
Detailed,
general
it's-
plan. We're going to put some parameters on it, so it's not, you know, it's going to be the council and planning commission looking at allowing them and setting reasonable rules on them, but we're not going to say it's going to be a 20-foot access, and that's not general
Correct,
plan.
that's not, that's down the road.
That's down the
You know, one thing, you know, Ron brings up about 10 or 15 years. One thing Highland has done well, and I'm just gonna say, I think I look at some other communities where they struggle with some of their land use, we have been pretty consistent in our land use, meaning the general plan has been a very good guiding thing, so we have to be very careful. Because I know when I ran, I said I support the general plan, and that's kind of been when I've been, you know, if you want to say as elected officials, trying to support that general plan. And now Anna goes, well, how did Ridgeview come about? Well, that was in our general plan as a mixed use. Everything around the town center was that. Now, if you go, Highland Mains was part of that general plan. That's why for some individuals, and it gives the signal to elected officials, kind of their blueprint. And that's why it's important for us to, if we want something, we got to be thinking, because that's going to be signaling to other, you know, future, you know, planning commissioners and city council what our land use is going to be.
Yes.
So what options do we have in recrafting the general plan to address Timpanogos Highway and the properties that you dot?
So going back to that, I think our best thing is to get with UDOT and talk about, are they really going to be widening? If not, will they be surplusing those properties? Because if you can get a homeowner in, then they probably will beautify the property.
Because there's only so much they can do. I mean, they only own so much of that stretch of Timpanogos Highway. You know, they can't widen it and then go back.
Right.
So, I mean, is there anything
So-
creative we can do in the plan that kind of
I mean,
influences
there's
that
the
direction?
sort of the typical avenues you can take, right? One, you could choose to do nothing in terms of and work with, more or less work with UDOT to try and get some change happening on those properties as they are the property owner, right? Two would be to rezone the property with the intention, or at least within the future land use plan, put a change in with the intention that future rezone might happen and some sort of development interest might come along. The third would be for you to take a participatory hand in the market and actually make something happen, which not too many communities in our area are terribly fond on that, but some do.
What you're saying, you go to eminent domain?
Not eminent domain, but you would make an offer to UDOT to purchase it and redevelop. So,
Yeah, that's that redevelopment funds and things like
yeah,
that.
yeah, it requires some significant investment for sure.
I agree with what the mayor is saying about the general plan, but we're here to update.
Correct, that's
the
what we're
general
doing.
plan.
Yeah.
So saying the status quo in the general plan has to stick, no, we're here to update it based on the future that we see we want for Highland.
So if we specifically address philosophically kind of the economic corridor into Highland, you know, which really is that area, I mean, that could in a way influence the direction of that property, or even just from like a beautification standpoint.
And I think we got to be careful. What are we trying to influence? Are we trying to influence that we want our corridor to be commercial? We're talking about commercial. Do we want our corridor to be commercial? Or, I mean, so it's the very first thing when you come up out of the dip, do you want to see there at Longhorn, do we want them to see a commercial development? Is that the first thing? Is that, I mean, that's what you have to kind of decide. What's the view we want? Do we want to have down SR 92, change it all to commercial? You know, is that the view we want? If we had the property where UDOT had, do we want it commercial?
Just pass Longhorn Hill.
Well, no, across, do we want the whole,
Oh, on the other
do we
side.
want to be a state street? Do we want to become a state street? And that's your question, because that's going, now, are you just trying to beautify by having the homes taken care of? Because I think that's what, what is it you want commercially?
There's really two questions. So the first is, what do we want?
Fred, I'm going to need to have you speak into your microphone. Thank you.
But I could talk loud enough for this. So I think the first question is, what do we want as a community? And that's what you're describing, Mayor, is what do we want to see? What do we want to be as a community? And that should reflect the will of the people, right? What do our citizens want to be as a community? The second question is, what can we support?
Okay.
So this idea of commercial development is just saying, well, we're going to paint it red here and paint it red here. We want a commercial node here and a commercial node here. May be challenging. I mean, you look at your town center and what used to be painted commercial and what is no longer painted commercial because of the inability to actually draw that type of development here. So, I mean, a question we should ask is, have you had people knocking down your door to fill this space with commercial property at the town center?
No.
And the answer is no, right? Really what's happened is it's transitioned to saying, well, we think we can get some commercial to, if you let us build multifamily housing or high density or residential, we'll build right now. But commercial, we can't really make that happen. That's not going to pencil, and we don't have any tenants to fill that space. So when you look at what's supportable for Highland, it doesn't really point to a lot of commercial development. You don't have a lot of future rooftops, population increase, and you're not willing to change that picture. And that can be okay if the answer to our first question is, we want to be what we are now. We want to stay Highland, and we're okay trying to infill a little bit, but these areas that we have to develop, we're okay if they stay residential in nature or address other issues, whether that's senior housing or affordability. That may be the tool that you're utilizing, going back to Sam's initial comment of land use. Maybe that's the element here. Because I guess through this discussion, my concern is if we try to say we want commercial elsewhere, then the town center struggles even more. Because there's only so much demand in Highland. Yeah, Jerry.
And I'll piggyback on that. Commercial will come if it's on SR 92 and close to Lehigh. It'll come.
Yes.
And it'll probably come from here immediately. And so that's what we have to try to avoid is, was this the right place to put commercial? Probably not, but we put it there.
Yeah.
So we have to support it, and we have new development going in, and you put something down SR 92, that's where they're gonna go because that's the,
It's easiest.
yeah, ask any marketing guy, they're gonna
Yeah.
say that's where they wanna be. They wanna be
When
close
you
to that
say it's
intersection.
gonna come from here, meaning it'll be taken.
Yeah.
That demand.
Yeah, as a commercial, Highland Mains is already put themselves behind because they're now sitting off the road. Does that make sense? That's why they've got, and I hate to say this, when I heard that Lehigh was opening that other, and I'm going, okay, what tenants did we just lose? Does that, I mean, that was, now, and we've been trying to figure out if we still have a couple of the restaurants, you know, and I was trying to figure out, you know, but we haven't seen, you know, I visited with some restaurateurs, when you ask, with Highland Mains, and I know when I talked to Kim Riddell, we visited with a couple of restaurateurs. They haven't seemed to push the pencil to sign the lease. It's not that we haven't had some conversations. I mean, you know, I went and visited some of the restaurants in their other areas, but they're just not signing the lease. It's not that, you know, we're having a conversation and they back off. Now, some are going to say, is it our Sunday policy? I know that's going to come up. That's not been the biggest bugaboo for some of them, has been Sunday.
They're off one day a week anyway. It's usually Monday. They just choose Sunday. It's
Yeah,
not a big deal.
Yeah, it's not been as a high, that's what I'm talking about. The alcohol, we heard alcohol was the reason they weren't coming. We did a survey of our community. We changed the alcohol law. How many restaurants have we had run in here for the last year and a half since we changed our alcohol? I mean, this comes back to your thing. We haven't, and I hate to say it's probably the restaurants you're going to see coming in. I was there at, I love Low India. I think they have really good food. They were half full on Saturday night. Now, I know it's summer and things kind of, but it's not like they were packed.
It is a demand issue, and often commercial synergy happens at the intersection of growth and the transportation network. Where is it easy to get to? and where's the growth happening? And unfortunately, the growth is happening outside of your community, right? Just right outside of your boundaries. And that's where the synergy will happen. And if you my worry is if you try to create additional commercial nodes, then it won't be new demand that's generated. It will be
You're taking away.
you're taking away from your town center, and that demand will shift location to ease of access and the commercial development that's happening outside of your community. So,
Can I make a comment? I appreciate what you're saying. I think the thing we struggle with at the time is we had some bad designs in the past. So there was kind of this Riverwood design that was done 20 years ago where we put the businesses with the backside of the business on the highway and park behind. And that doesn't ever seem to work. And when Walgreens was originally going to come in the corner, and when I was on the council before, and at CBS now, but they said, we're not going to come unless people can park in front. And so that's always been a problem with those other businesses, and I think it's one of the problems with Highland Mains too, because it's back there hidden. So it's kind of an ideal thing. It's just like we always say we want businesses you can walk to, but this is America, and everybody drives everywhere. And so we can't, it's hard to change that cultural thing. So we've got a bad design on the north side that somehow we've got to work with. I mean, it's all, because originally there's been several grocery stores that couldn't come in and this and that and stuff. And I don't know how to overcome that. And I don't know if people have suggestions, but I hope Highland Mains is successful. But, it's been, 2 years and nothing's happened.
Well, they're back there building right now. If you go there, they've got their foundations in, they're framed, they've got one building framed up. They're coming. Does that make sense?
The buildings are coming, correct? And so it's now getting the occupancy who will fill that space. But you're right on the issue of accessibility and the design or a product that may not meet the demand. Essentially, we have, again, major intersection of vehicular traffic, not necessarily a community designed around multimodal forms of transportation. And that can create some challenges when a business wants to have a lot of parking in the front where people can just pull in and access their business. Those types of things are going to be very difficult to change. I mean, the development is there, right? Redevelopment is costly and usually happens well beyond the useful life of that building itself. When it gets dilapidated and run down, then you can acquire property and tear it down and redevelop. You see that happening along the Wasatch Front, very high.
Phil, can I ask you a question? So about 6 years ago, we did an economic study here in Highland, and it came back that we could support they felt like we could support the following, which was restaurants. They said, hey, you can support restaurants. Enough. 21,000, yeah.
21,000. With all of the development, the available land, do you have an idea of what your population will be?
25.
Yeah, so that's what we assumed in our analysis was 25,000 people. If you kept the same pattern, so that's assuming that you could capture the same amount of spending that you are currently, which again may be challenging because of competitive market sites. So this was assuming you could get what you currently have. There was maybe 150,000 square feet of supportable commercial through build out, through that full 5,000 people. Again, that assumes that you capture what you're capturing now. You're not increasing your capture rate. You're not decreasing that number. 150,000 is a whole lot of commercial space through build-out, right? Add another 5,000 people. And it's likely that commercial space will remain focused on personal services, which is what you're currently getting. And maybe the eating, food establishments. Essentially what people want to have close to their homes. we're not talking about regional commercial space or even supermarket space or an anchor tenant or anything like that. I mean, the likelihood of that happening is just very slim relative to proximity, where you're at, and those competitive market sites.
150 include Highland Mains or not?
Yes.
So, meaning Highland Mains will take away from that 150,000.
Yeah. So what's proposed at Highlands?
Are they 30, 35?
I'm adding it right now.
Okay, we will have that answer in a minute.
Well, how much is remaining here?
Do you mind if I make another comment? I'm sorry to keep interrupting, but, the bottom line is it's nice to talk about getting these services and things. And I support that. But at the same time, the bottom line is the sales tax. And, because of legislation and stuff, three-quarters of our sales tax, at least, comes from surrounding communities. We share it with them. So only 25% is direct sales tax. And it'd be nice to have more direct sales tax, but it may never happen. So I think, and I was talking to Congressman Kennedy 2 weeks ago, I think we need our own zip code so that we don't have all the leakage from online sales going to other communities, especially our communities up south of us, because we share the same zip code. And actually, Mayor, you met with Mayor Manager and maybe our state representative who's here too can help us with this. But Representative Kennedy basically said, you tell me who to contact and I will send them a letter and say they need their own zip code. Now, I don't know if that's a universal one, but to me, I think we're losing about $100,000 in sales tax a year from what we've looked at. So we can talk about building more commercial, but maybe we ought to see if we can't make sure we're getting our maximum sales tax.
That's a great point. And is in line with some of these strategies that we've put on the board relative to the economic development element, which is essentially how do we address what we have and maybe not focus on what may be, right, trying to generate additional commercial space, but how do we solidify and strengthen what's already here and not jeopardize that space. Or what we don't want to have happen is create a policy or elements within the general plan that jeopardize an existing commercial node, the strength that already exists. We want to support that.
Phil, I have a question. So a lot of us our sales taxes went from 5 years ago about 2 million to we're about 4.1 right now. So we have had, do you know if when the Walmart, like if we do an Amazon, I know Amazon, we get it sales tax here, but if Walmart groceries, is it to our address too? Does Highland get that sales tax?
Yeah.
Or does it stay at that store where it's ordered at?
No, so if you have a distribution center, if there's a location point that may influence, but not online sales is the end point.
Okay, but my question is, Walmart's doing it out of their stores. Okay, Amazon has a warehouse and they're bringing it from the warehouse. Do you know, Krista, how that's done? I mean, because
Well, he answered it. It's the end point.
I would be willing to bet that's going back to Walmart's location.
See, that's the store. Walmart converted their stores to be fulfillment centers.
Right.
But they're having a store operation. And that's been my fear is Walmart might be capturing as a store sales tax and not the delivery, the end point where Walmart
It
or
should be the end point.
That's something legislation-wise that would make a huge difference for some kids.
Amazon is a shop local program.
Well, yeah, okay, but Kristen's our state rep. This is something the state could say, Walmart, even though you have a storefront, if you deliver it, because you're coming on our roads, you're using that service, it needs to be the end point. That's
So they're picking up.
the end point. We want the end point.
Yeah, especially if you have a difference if I drive to Walmart and they deliver groceries and all the merchandise that I purchase, but it's at that store location, that's different.
What about DoorDash?
What's that?
What about DoorDash?
Yeah, so that's different than the product being delivered to my home and I don't have to go.
See, so it'd be DoorDash, it would be Amazon delivery. Not Amazon does it because it's their warehouse, they're not a physical store.
Yeah.
It's going to be your DoorDash because that's going to be ringed in at that store. unfortunately, my house sees a lot of DoorDash from McDonald's. I don't know why. It's not me. It's not me. I go, just get in the car and go to McDonald's. Use your app. But no, I have a son live with me. But DoorDash, if we could, I'm just saying, where we see our services where we're slipping is probably some of that. Now, if we have our zip code, I know some of our online sales, and I'm getting facetious, but it's,
But the bottom line is how many times do you put in our zip code and it comes up American Fork? Is your address in American Fork? All the time. So you can't tell me that the sales guys isn't going to AF.
so Kristen, I paid for my business here in Highland. I went and had to do my renewal registration, put the zip code in, it still came American Fork, and I'm going, this is the state telling me I'm an American Fork. I don't mean to pick on you, it's just so nice to have you here.
I think that idea of the zip code and the retail or the online sales are great points to figure out how do we capture more of what's being spent in Highland. DoorDash, you know, maybe there's not a lot of dollars there, but yeah, I'm not sure. You'd have to look at how much of that retail spending happens in that form. But anything grocery related, that I could see some big dollars there.
Well, even R.C. Willey's, let's assume you bought furniture and they're delivering. Now you can say, oh, you came in and placed the order, or did you do it online in your delivery? I mean, I understand you can get going different things, but.
So for everyone's information,
Carfax,
we currently have planned footprints for about 127,000 square feet of commercial.
You're saying currently right now over
Between Highland Mains, Lot 3 next to Wendy's, the site plan over there, 10700, the 2 PO zone sites that are planned, we have about 130,000 square feet of commercial that has a plan for its footprint already.
That leaves us about 20,000 to work with.
There's also a site up in the PO zone next to the church that has not been planned at all. So we are very close to maxing out on commercial in Highland with what we've planned.
That is invaluable information. I cannot thank you enough.
And so the occupancy of that's what, 30, 40%?
Yeah, so essentially
So we
the
still have to
additional
fill that.
residential demand that you have not built yet is designed to support those spaces, which is why you may see a challenge relative to occupancy and the space that you've already programmed relative to commercial.
Well, okay, here's something interesting. Your Vasa Fitness is really busy over by Smith's, right?
Right.
They actually inquired about Longhorn. And it was the time when Rod Mann was here. And I said, Rod, their memberships, they don't pay sales tax. I said, you're going to get all the traffic and you get no sales tax.
Yeah.
I was going, if you want the pain, you want to also have the benefits.
I mean, that could, you have to look at
I
those
could have
as
walked to the
potentially demand generators, you know, it helps draw demand.
Gyms in the
Again,
basement.
that would draw demand away from the town
I think
center
six is for you.
if you were at the Longhorn.
I just have to cross this, right? Through the tunnel.
Yeah, slide through. Yes, so I do have a 7 o'clock meeting, so I apologize. And Sam will be going through the affordable housing element. But there were some other elements here relative to economic development, reducing barriers to entry. What does that look like? So that idea of the Sunday closure, is that really a barrier to entry or not? So we have to determine what those barriers are impact fees a barrier to entry, and what are the consequences of removing those barriers. So we want to be careful when we talk about barriers to entry. There's usually a double-edged sword associated with those elements, and we just need to be careful of those. This item is really focused on this idea of focusing on what we have, so business retention, ensuring that we understand the needs of your businesses and surveying those needs regularly. That would be, in my mind, a very critical element to understanding what existing businesses need, and that will change over time, and so you need to understand that as you work through the general plan, the 10-year planning horizon. That should be a key element. Networking opportunities or using government space to help with the facilitation of existing businesses, and how can city government help foster that type of culture within the community to strengthen what you have. hosting of regular events. So this isn't generating new space, but it's generating interest in the space, and interest in commercial areas in the form of farmers markets or art venues, street festivals, whatever you can do to promote attention to a specific location. If that's the town center, how do we create events? Example is in our community, my community of Bountiful, the city focused on redeveloping Main Street through some creative redevelopment.
Chalk Walk.
Yes, Chalk Art Festival. Yes.
And I go to Bountiful for that.
Yes, yeah, so it's created such an event that it draws people from all over the place.
Yeah, Megan does that.
And the amount of traffic that hits that location now was very invigorating to the Main Street businesses. But they do a lot of other things, the Coats for Kids, where we bring everybody down to that location along Main Street and all the events there. It's just so wonderful to do that. So this idea of hosting regular events and creating a tradition around those events in these locations will support local businesses and support the town center in those key locations. Then encourage mixed use or office development. You're already doing some of that, so I think focusing on that element and how you increase that daytime demand, that will also be beneficial. Again, the idea is mixed use creates additional demand. You have to just determine how to use that. We talked a little bit about this, the local identity. I don't know if you want to spend more time on these as I step away.
Fairly straightforward, that one. But you know, really trying to lean into what is the branding, the storytelling we can say about how Highlands people are coming to the community, and what sort of installations of art or wayfinding or gateways can we treat to try and help strengthen Highlands identity, both the community boundary, but also within a distinctive district like the town center.
This one is an idea. So when I was thinking about, as we talked about supporting the what exists, and I don't necessarily like the term senior economy. That can, I don't know. I'm getting to be older, and I don't like my kids calling me senior. I'm only 46, and it's starting to make fun of me. But this idea of a mature economy, you know, again, we already have strengths, and let's promote those. So how do we leverage the demographics that we have? And maybe that's a promotion of specific types of businesses when we already have that space identified, but focusing on healthcare services, home renovation, mobility providers, personal services. What does our community need locally to serve our population? Again, we're not looking to serve outside of our community. Not that we're closing borders, obviously, but what do our residents need and what do they want locally? So this idea of benefiting your demographics and what that might look like. So that could be some language that can be built into the general plan. Again, the idea here is not necessarily specifics, but what do we focus on as a community, which then influences future decisions. As you, as a legislative body and future legislative bodies are grappling with land use policy, these will help guide some of those decisions to say, yes, we're in favor of this type of change to our land use or development, versus no, we're not in favor of it because it doesn't fit with our vision. So this could be an element that gets baked into that, a specific type of focus. And then supporting local entrepreneurship. The second bullet point would depend on funding. So this can be challenging for communities to identify specific funding for incubator programs or this idea of creating space for new business creation. So that could be another element, but that would be dependent on funding, future funding, but it could be a part of the strategy. Alrighty.
Yeah,
Okay, yes. I'm going to sneak into the back room if that's okay. Jay.
Thank you, Fred.
Are you going to join us later, Fred, or are you kind of going to be back there in another meeting?
What's the time frame of this?
Yes.
8 o'clock. That's why we started at 6.
Thank you.
Right.
Okay.
Uh,
Hang on.
this again.
All right, Mentimeter. Pull out your phones. A lot of ideas that Fred's kind of thrown in there as a bit of a whirlwind. But hopefully you're able to take them all in.
I agree with everything Fred said. I'm dead serious.
I know. Me too.
A couple of big ideas, big sort of picture ideas that came to me as Fred was kind of discussing all these things. One, I think there is a lot to be said for your town center and its potential. And I know that the economic climate seems difficult for it, but I really do feel like investiture in that is like a real win for your community and its identity, right? The other thing I'll say is, I've heard so much talk from you all about the success of your library and the programming that goes on there, and I think, some of these ideas that we're talking about here, if you can channel the same sort of energy, right, and the same sort of drive that the library has going into some of into your business community and your events centered around supporting business, wow, I think that would be amazing. So, but let's see what you all think.
This is such an exciting innovation.
Interesting.
Okay. Everyone get their chance to kind of throw their dots up there. All right, so I'm seeing a lot of interest in focusing on the town center and hosting regular events and programming. So I think those kind of go hand in hand a little bit. There's some ties there. Certainly supporting our business retention and promoting, supporting local entrepreneurship, the senior economy, aging in place, all strong in promoting a local identity. And we have some other ideas in the room. I wish it would let me share those.
There was no place to type in.
Was there no place to type in?
No, when you hit other, there was nothing else to do.
I'm sorry. Well, you want to share them now?
Well, I mean, professionally, my expertise is marketing and advertising, and it really takes a targeted and committed campaign on the city's part to create and foster the kind of community involvement that we're looking for. And that does take resources on the city's part. It's hard to do. I think it would be hard to do with what we have right now, the staff that we have now. But you hear about these success stories all the time, whether it's on the parts of other cities that really start something that generates buzz, that draws people in. And you look at the framework and kind of the genesis of how these great ideas happen, and it's the same process that we see in marketing businesses. And the hardest thing that any business I've done advertising and marketing for, the hardest thing for them is the commitment. If they don't see instant results after a month or two, they want to jump ship and try something else. And it takes serious long-term commitment to stay the course. And so, I mean, obviously, here in this room, there's, an appetite for hosting regular events and programming, supporting, local businesses and focus on the town center. But it's going to take increasing the resources that we have here in the city. And I think it would be wildly successful, and I think there is an appetite for it amongst Highland City residents. Because not only is it something for us to do here, but it creates an identity that I think is lacking, an element of our identity that's lacking. I don't know what you guys hear out there, but our votes in here are indicative of that. I think that should be a definite focus of the cities and of the general plans.
So let me kind of share, maybe, I put down other, and I think some of the council, or most of the council know what we've kind of been thinking. We have a local Chamber of Commerce. One of the concerns is it's down in American Fork, and so they seem to focus in on American Fork. They have what's called the Lone Peak Chamber of Commerce, but it does not seem to focus on the Lone Peak area.
No.
And so we, and staying actively in American Forks Chamber, but focusing our financial commitment there, doing something more for the businesses, specifically in Highland. And as I brought that up with some of the mayors, and you got to be look at a couple of the other mayors, they kind of say, hey, is that something we can maybe participate in? But at first, we are putting some money to be able to focus in on just bringing the businesses in to listen to what some of their concerns are. If it is a Sunday close, is that what they're going to come and tell us? What is it that we have barriers that we're too restrictive, or how can we help them? You brought up some really good ones. We have a farmer's market, and as I look at it, my kids used to do a lot of these events where they take a snow cone thing. And I was looking at all the food vendors there, and I've noticed as they've evolved, you see small business, they'll test their food, their restaurant concept, usually in a food vending type of thing at an event. And then I've seen a lot of them, they seem to be successful, and they get a little following, and now they feel comfortable to go in to be a restaurant. And I go, okay, that is that incubator. And now we have a farmer's market, and I'm probably at fault as much as everyone. We probably not really try to encourage our businesses to support the farmer's market. We're seeing small entrepreneurs come to that farmer's market to test a concept. And we probably aren't pushing that as much. The next thing is where we struggle as a community, and we were just talking about this. I've talked to the Alpine mayor, and we were with we don't know why on their event night. So our fling, we try to do a dinner to kind of kick it off. We'll get a handful, maybe up to 50 people to come, and Alpine will get 1,000. And I think that's that consistency where you just, okay, you've got to start getting consistent, and they know what you're doing and being there. Because it used to be the band would do the breakfast before the parade. What was always so busy, and so some of it's, I was hearing that even from Alpine. Well, we had to pull away so it's not busy, so they can focus, but it's just, that's that community aspect. And having businesses involved. I don't think we've really, to be very open, I feel guilty, and I'm a business owner. What have we done to try to help our business succeed? We do.
Well, I think we start with having a chamber. I think we need our own chamber. I believe it could be done. I believe there's a lot of interest. I've only talked to 5 or 6 businesses. Every single one of them said they would support it. There wasn't one that wasn't.
Is it a chamber? Is it a
option.
Kiwanis club? How does that work? We used to have a Kiwanis. That's what I'm saying. A chamber. I always think, okay, do we just hire a person, or are they doing it themselves? And Eagle Mountain's been successful in starting a chamber. But they've gotten a funding source. You're going to laugh. Their funding source, if you drive in Eagle Mountain, you'll notice by every development, they have great big signs to say who the developer is, and other signs down. Their chamber gets all the money, and they get to rent them throughout the whole city. They go, that's your funding source? Yes. So they have to have some funding to be able to move forward.
Yes.
But I mean, as a community, this comes back to economic development. And this, my thought is, how many times, and I always hate the cell phone company that gives the person that's new the deal when I've been their customer for 10 years, yes, and I don't have the deal. And here I am leasing a place, and I have a tenant that's been with me for 6 years. They want a remodel. Well, the person just moved in next door. I sure gave them 6 months free rent and all that. And I'm looking going, why am I not rewarding my existing tenant? Because they're willing to commit for another 5 years with that same type of deal. And I think that's where we have to look at our existing businesses. They're making it succeed. They're bringing our sales tax in. We're always trying to say, let's go open a new building. Well, we have existing. We go support them.
Yeah.
I'm just going to. I think that's your best thing is to probably support what we have.
That's right.
Can I make a comment? Are we allowed just to kind of talk about all these things now?
Yeah, that's
okay.
exactly
So,
what we want to use this
one
time
thing
for.
that ranked really high is promote, support local entrepreneurship. I think we need to have a real discussion about that because we have a lot of smart, successful people in our city, and I know there's a lot of home businesses parameters around that. So, because if they get too successful, then we have all our neighbors come in here and complain to council. Alpine Food Storage, very successful, developed during COVID, and so where are they now? They're in American Fork because we didn't have a place to accommodate them in Highland. And I'm just thinking, maybe we need to have, and I don't know the answer to this, but a philosophy that we encourage business, but we have some sort of way for them, if they want to stay in Highland, a place where they can go. And I think we suggested different things for Alpine Food Storage, but that's highly successful business, and it's highly successful in American Fork now. So how do we keep those businesses that are created in Highland? And I think that's a discussion we need to have.
I mean, one of the things, you either have a service, like, there's times people need to have different things printed. So, okay, should that be a private company that provides that printing? Or can the library have a specified, to make a little flyer for them? And I'm talking a little bigger posters that'd be easier. But that's where you don't want to get caught in that. It is interesting, okay, you go to the chamber, I'll tell you who's there. You have realtors, insurance brokers, and bankers. Because they're trying to network to get you as their customer.
That's right.
And I think what you're saying, Scott, okay, we can do that. How do we help support here? What services they need? A lot of them are very successful. If they're inside their, like I said, they probably are somewhat, but is there an incubator? The question is, do we need to be an incubator to try to help people get business going? How do we do that? How do we support those? We have retail business and then you have home business. And there are two different types.
Another example, the owners of Neaters lived in Highland for a long time. And this isn't really well known, but for a long time, Highland got the sales tax from the Neaters in Lehigh.
All their online, it was their online sales.
That's right. So, I don't know. But
I have thought about marketing, saying, if you have an online business, put your Nexus here to make sure everything goes.
Other thoughts from the group? What are you feeling about some of these things being shared?
As a staff member, can I echo what Wes has said? Ultimately, what you're talking about sounds fantastic, but it is not achievable. Some of what you're talking about is not achievable with our current staff. And I do not mean that negative about our current staff. We're fantastic. We don't have that expertise and we don't have the time to be an economic development group or start a chamber of commerce. We can host a lunch, right, where we invite all of our businesses and get their feedback. I hope that we then have the capacity to take and do something with that feedback, frankly, at that point.
I think it starts with things like the events coordinator in Highland is part-time. They should be full-time. If we're really going to take serious events and do what we're talking about doing here, and I was certainly one of those 10, I think it's exciting, the potential of what that can create, but we're not going to do it with a part-time staff.
Yeah.
It's that simple.
It's going to take, taking our budget and taking a chunk and saying, hey, we're going to devote this amount of money out of the budget to hiring someone and to promoting and supporting local businesses, and just it's kind of a leap of faith, but it's going to take part of the budget away. And I think it's worth it, but
it's literally, this is the vision, this is what we want, we put it in the general plan, we've got to mean it. We then got to come back and backfill, because Aaron's absolutely right, and Wes, and I'm glad it's been brought to the surface, because it's been my concern that we don't have saying we don't have the right staff isn't the right wording. We don't have the right structure within that staff to get where we need to go. And if we really mean this, if we're going to put it in the general plan, we're making a commitment for our council and for future councils to go to that general plan and get the vision and carry it out. And it's going to take money.
Okay, so my question is, this really part of the general plan? Is advanced planning part of a general plan?
I think that it can be a sort of measure which you can work towards to say that we're going to have a focus on doing this for the reason of supporting our town center, for the reason of supporting our entrepreneurs, right?
There's
so,
a relationship.
But the details of how that actually takes shape, the actual vehicle that you're going to
But if we do that right, we should get more revenue from the increased commercial.
I'm going to take an opportunity to put a plug in for data. that I personally good with investing in some additional marketing, some additional programming, some additional staff to really drive things forward for the business. But we have to be committed to having enough data that we can track that over time and make sure that's really worthwhile. That if 2 years down the road we discover that we're not getting anything out of it, we have enough data to decide that and conclude that, okay, we're going to wrap this down, or we're going to pivot, or something.
And we can certainly structure the implementation measures of the plan this way. If your first step is to do that research, figure out how you're feeling about it. Then maybe if you feel good about it, you move forward with establishing a chamber or an economic development group. It's not like you have to do all this at once. Thoughts around I'd like to hear folks' thoughts around the senior economy. Had eight supporters for that.
One of the things that has always seemed plausible to me when we talk about, if we're talking about senior housing, probably we're talking about the Longhorn property.
Right.
And one of the things that has always seemed plausible to me is some small business around there that is particularly targeted to what is needed by those folks in the senior housing.
For the convenience of the senior population.
For convenience, that it's right there, local. That's the kind of commercial that seems to me like it would make sense as part of that. And that's what I was thinking.
And I've seen the senior targeted versus senior restricted, and the senior targeted simply does not work. So if we're going to get serious about senior, it's got to be senior restricted. But then, what are we going to do to support that? And what Doug is saying is spot on. We've got to then look at, we've got to have some convenience there for them. And that probably includes healthcare.
Well, some of it, go ahead.
Let's define senior.
Yeah, I think this is the thing I think Scott's asking, because what's our senior and what is it what type of senior are we trying to do?
Well, we ran into this before, where we have developers come, and part of Bridgeview was, we're in market list for seniors. And there's a lot of seniors that live out there, but when we developed the higher density townhomes up in Sky Ridge?
Sky Estates.
Sky Estates, okay. It was supposed to be for seniors. But, how do you restrict that? And that, because we have all the developers coming in and saying we want to build this, but in the end, they don't restrict it or really promote seniors. We've talked about this. So, you could build housing like that all over, but if there's no seniors, how do you solve that? Because how do you say, hey, we just got to have seniors living here? Can you do that legally? I don't know. It seems like it's always been a problem in the past.
Yeah, you can certainly put the restrictions in place, but once again, there's a demand issue, right?
And how do you find senior? Is it 70 and above?
Well, there's a lot of 55-plus communities.
Whoa.
55.
How did I get thrown in there?
That's the thing, and there's places, we've got every kind of senior living somewhere around, in this country that you can imagine. Everything from just independent little homes, and then you can go on to, if you need help going into the main building, blah, 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 get more memory care at the end or whatever. And then we have others that are just assisted or nursing homes and stuff like that. But everything's out there already. We don't have to reinvent the wheel or anything. We just have to decide, like you said, what kind we want. But I have to share an observation I just thought of. That's a joke in a way. We've talked a little bit about what do we want people to see when they come in, down the road, what they see. And we've talked about seniors, because I always think of it Longhorn also. I was thinking, this is great. People will come in, they'll see a cemetery on one side, senior homes on the other. Welcome to Highland.
It's all one market. We have a full service market. Okay, so for me, let's go back to your program events. I think we're seeing some screaming out there. When I say screaming, we do have a senior activity that we've had to start pushing seniors away that's not sponsored by the city, that we have our Arts Council doing. And we're hearing about them coming out. That's if you're talking about events. If we talk all about the business, it might be we need to start looking at senior events.
The Arts Council is turning away people for programs all across the age spectrum.
But that's, now it hadn't always been that way. That, there was times they weren't getting enough for their arts class or enough for their guitars. I mean, it's not like, but the question comes in is, do we see them aging in place here? And I think we've got to really find out, do our seniors, are they looking to move? I'm getting old enough that I'd classify as senior, and I've got a lot of older individuals than me in my neighborhood, and they're staying put. Now, are they staying put because they love the area, or they want to stay put and they want to stay in their home? I think are they wanting to move out to a senior community? I've kind of signaled that, but my beautiful, beautiful, wonderful wife has not signaled that. Now, she's younger than me, but she's signaling she wants to stay in place. And so I'm going, is that what our seniors in our community are asking for, is a senior housing, and what do they want? Do they want the clubhouse, the pool, all this, or are they wanting assisted living? I think that's...
Or are they wanting to build an ADU legacy house on the property they live on, let the kids move into the house, which brings in another revenue.
Kids have to want to move.
They stay, well, mine do. So, but the opportunity for them to be able to stay, see, when I see age in place and senior, we have an economy right now of the current residents, and if they leave, then we lose that and we gain one more. But if they're able to build, a little 1,500 square foot ADU on the side and even rent it. Sally Poet rents her homes out and lives in a small portion of it, and it covers everything for her. Yeah. So that's what I look at when I think of, and I do know we want, because there comes a point where you can't live in that house, and so you do need to be in an assisted living type situation. But I also look at it, we're acre lots. Acre lots fit a little ADU. In Flagstaff, we have quarter acre lots that we put ADUs on, detached. I don't recommend that here. I mean, it's tight. I'm just saying, but it meets the same purpose. It does our affordable housing. It gives revenue to somebody who owns property but can rent out a portion but not have them in their home. So that's kind of where I see that. And then we add a rooftop to keep the commercial going.
And I'm not sure how I'm vacillating on the ADUs, but another benefit of it is when you're saying, your wife wants to stay. My husband mows a hill, up and down every week. That's our yard, and I have a view out every window that's just beautiful. So he's like, I'll move tomorrow. And we'll get moved. And I'll move, but I'm like, but where are we gonna get this view? And a lot of that stuff. So I can see a lot of the guys saying, yeah, I'll move. I've got an acre of land, mowing, or a half acre or whatever.
That mowing's keeping him alive, though.
Yeah. Oh no, he's
good exercise.
Riding 100 miles on his bike is keeping him alive.
Do you have any information about the success or lack of Farmington's ADU changes, a big effort they put into? The Planning Commission created this massive change for ADUs for Farmington. The council adopted it, but do we have any information or data on what's happened? Has it been successful?
I don't have any data.
I think it's too new.
It's too new.
It may be too new.
Yeah.
But are there any
And
problems?
that's the issue that we see with a lot of the ADU ordinances that communities have put into place is they've all gone in the last 2 years, 2
Well,
3 years.
Pleasant Grove put one in, and I know after 1 year, they had one applicant.
Yeah, and that's commonplace, actually. Yeah, it takes time. I mean, it's an investment, especially if you're going to do an external detached ADU. That's a significant investment to construct a structure.
I mean, you do a detached ADU, they've got to come and probably hook up to the sewer. I mean, you start looking at cost of just doing that, you're going, just rip down the house and just do
I think a lot of this is totally valid, and I think it's a really great vision, but at the end of the day, on Longhorn Field, we can't say what kinds of businesses. We can say that we think it would be really nice to have things that would support seniors, but at the end of the day, it's private property, and those business owners are going to decide what will work there and who will come there, and we don't get a pick.
I think that to some extent we do get to pick, because we can zone it as residential or we can zone it as mixed use.
And once we do that, though, we don't get to pick and choose who comes, whether it's
That's true, yeah.
medical or whatever it is. I mean,
You can regulate the uses, but yeah, the more restrictive you get, the more challenging it can be to get the occupancy you're looking for.
Like we did here,
But
trying to
being
get
realistic
commercial
about
under
it.
the,
Yeah.
You're just gonna pull
they're just
business
gonna go
away
to Smith's.
yeah.
from the town center.
Everything you need, pharmacy,
It may.
You're
food,
kidding ourselves if we
clothing.
think is
Yeah,
it
and that's a
furniture.
very valid point. You're going back to that.
Mixed use by nature is smaller. I mean, I think you are, just based on the demographic and the zoning, you're kind of creating a space for businesses that won't really exist many other places in the city.
If we do the senior kind of housing route for Longhorn, I think my idea would have been to do, we have a senior care assisted living overlay zone that's kind of aligned to one location. This isn't general plan, this is how we'd implement this is the goal, but we create that overlay zone that would say you get density if you have age-restricted communities where you're showing us you're recording deed restrictions on it.
Yeah.
And you get some commercial uses, but it's these 5, and it's a doctor's office, a medical supply store, and that's it. Like, we say you get these 3 things. That's a way of doing it where we can try to limit it. Whether that would actually work, whether that would entice the users to come in, who knows? That would be, if we adopt this as a general plan, then we'll start talking policy much later down the road.
Yeah. And the developer may bite on that or not. Right. So it's hard to know.
But if we have the age-restricted area, it would seem natural that a developer would look at that's part of the population that's going to draw into whatever he's going to put in there, commercial-wise. So I would think what Doug was talking about plays into that, because it is a population that then needs that service, and if the need's there, I would think the developer would want to meet that need. But again, like Brittany's saying, it's not up to us, but we don't want to put any barriers up that eliminate the potential of doing that. So we need the mixed-use area, in my opinion.
Yeah, that Store to Survive would have to provide more than just the little group that's there.
Yeah.
Because half that group's just gonna go to Smith's anyways, or have Walmart deliver whatever they need.
Right.
I mean, you're not gonna have a doctor go in there and just
Facilitate.
help these people.
Yeah.
I love you,
Just that group, it's just not enough rooftops.
Right.
You know, it's gotta be a draw.
to be a
Yeah.
That's a rooftop.
And I think that's a question.
But it'll balance out.
As we're looking at land use, I mean, are we talking all of Longhorn being, age restricted? And that's where we go, okay, if you're only
Could be a
talking
part of it.
50 units, that doesn't generate enough
No, it doesn't.
for a little corner store. I mean, that's where I think that Fred was talking about. You have to have rooftops to generate, and that a retailer will always look, hey, how am I gonna get my, a good retailer should do a study, and they almost can pinpoint there's enough rooftops they know they can open.
Yeah.
An entrepreneur will always go off a gut feeling, and sometimes their gut doesn't teach them. A corporation will have, here's my heat map, that's exactly where I'm supposed to be.
Well, the data that Doug's talking about is critical. I know for a fact that Walmart, or that 7-Eleven has moved a half a block from where they were, because that demographic was better 1/2 block down than where it was before. So that's where the developers are going to look at. How many rooftops do we have? What kind of population is there? What are the needs they have? And if we have the aging population there, hopefully that would factor in.
Well, he just told us what our build out, 25,000.
Yeah.
And we already have our commercial for that.
Right.
And we can't hardly fill what we have currently.
And I think that maybe the better route, rather than trying to locate this sort of business down in Longhorn, it's sounding like this could be a portion of what goes on in the town center, right?
A lot, yeah, and my mom lives in assisted living, and they have every one of them has a bus, and they take them out. And it kind of, they want to get out and go for a ride and stuff. And even if they went for a ride from near the town center or to, that's enough for some of them, just to get out of the building. They don't necessarily need a store right there and this right there and that.
Yeah, that's interesting.
The buses, and that makes it easier for the activities person, you know,
Yeah.
we can go out on the bus and they're not having to drive all over the place.
Go to Myers.
So let's ask the question, you're talking about town center. Build out, it's built out. Everything's approved in town center. Does that make sense? We don't have another development trying to come in unless it's city-owned property and the one business here that's having a really hard time even getting something to fit on the lot they have here. We have over by Highland Mains, we've now got a commercial that has started, and there's commercial. They have in their site plan 2 office buildings. There's potential maybe that they could add more property, and I think they're thinking office. Now, I don't know if their economic studies shows that they can be successful with office or not. I mean, are we talking that we'd be signaling over there, have some mixed use over in by the Highland Mains, or is what they've presented and planned what we're trying to talk about land use wise? Does that make sense? Right now it's office, what they've presented. They have an opportunity to expand some property possibly there, and I believe they're talking more office. But are we saying we want mixed use over there? We're trying to get more, are we looking at condos? Because it's not gonna be little town homes. They don't have enough, it'd have to be a Toscana type. Are we thinking, hey, we're open to condos going over there as a Toscana type or townhome type, or do we want them to stay with their concept of that? Is that helping maybe, Rob?
My response to that would be, at least personally, if we're trying to preserve and stimulate our little town centre experiment, I think it would make more sense to try and make this the locus. And to me, senior housing would make way more sense up there, or even in an overlay zone where we have some of these residential areas that are quite a little older and have opportunities for them to be redeveloped. But that's just my sort of 2 cents worth, so that people can walk out of their townhome or apartment and go to a restaurant or to a grocery store or a doctor around here, rather than trying to manage 4 or 5 different locations.
So are you talking that they're behind elevated dentistry, that area, maybe signaling that, hey, if you want to convert that into more of a senior type of area? Now, naturally, those are property owners. You might have one home say yes and the next one say no, we're staying. Yeah. That's right, where,
Sure.
But is that the area you're thinking?
Yeah, it's just sort of just around, just making the town centre, from a zoning point of view, a little larger for potential future use, but definitely on the Highland Mains, I think,
so you're talking where they, instead of having office buildings, maybe be open to more of a senior type of property there?
Yeah.
Do you understand?
Yeah.
So, can I join the discussion down at that end?
No. Go ahead, Scott.
Bring your chair down. I was sitting here thinking, we're throwing out a lot of ideas, and I agree with a lot of them. I think one of the things we have to kind of balance in Highland is, as city government people that are very active, we want to preserve Highland values that we talk about, but at the same time, we need to be willing to honor the property rights of the owners and the people and different things. So I'm not sure how we find that balance, because it's really easy to sit in a group if we don't own any businesses or property in Highland under our homes and say, this is what you have to do with your property and this is the only thing you can do. And I think we have to be respectful of their property rights and try to honor and work that, but still kind of balance things out. And we've done survey after survey in the city, and I understand the idea with the ADUs and all those things, and I support that. But at the same time, a lot of the citizens that are here kind of want larger lots and kind of more of a rural feel. We've talked about this ad nauseum, basically. So if we're introducing senior living and more business and different things, I think we just really need to be kind of joint partners with the developers in economic development. Does that make sense? Because they own the property and they've got the money. So how do we work with them to bring the best thing across? Now, I think sometimes the developers just kind of override everything in the city. And that's happening, I think, west of us. And I have a lot of patients that live over there, and they're frantic about the fact it's getting so crowded with their streets, they don't have water, they don't have utilities and things. So I think we have to find a balance, because our values have always been a little different. And if there's some way we can find with that, and I don't know the answer, I'm talking in a word salad, I'm sorry, but I think we need to be able to respect their property rights at the same time.
I think when you look at,
What property rights in should I be able to?
you know, any successful retail
I have 2
town
acres.
center,
Should I be able to put a store there?
it's, high density is a requirement, just
I just want the right.
universally across the board. And it's really where
Like where's the
high
property
density
rights under?
in a city like ours should be almost exclusively located. So if we're looking at Highland Mains as kind of an extension of the town center here, and even Ridgeview commercial, you know, which is higher density, I think it makes sense in the Highland Mains area to have an element of higher density or mixed use, keeping that open. That's the place for it. I don't know about the senior element. I don't know enough to know whether that would be an attractive draw for, you know.
That's
Right, right.
Did you have more to say, Scott?
Oh,
Okay.
Are you sure, Scott?
I always have more to say.
So let's, what have you heard from us? I'm interested to
Yeah.
hear what you think you've heard.
So, yeah,
Because I'm wondering what I heard.
That's a good question back to me. So, if I'm understanding correctly, I think the town center and trying to clarify and expand on this idea of a town center. What is the next leg for the town center look like? I think that's a focus of this plan, right? In whatever shape and way that is, I think that is a key thing. It seems to me that we're open to the idea of higher densities, mixed use, things of that nature occurring within that town center. And so that's one sort of vehicle that I'm hearing. Another thing I'm hearing is this idea of the need to support our business community and the potential for dedicating some resources to establish something like a Chamber of Commerce to help with programming and other local business support to try and advance on that front. Those are honestly the 2 biggest voices I've heard here tonight.
What did you hear on the expansion of commercial?
Sorry?
What did you hear in general about expanding our commercial footprint?
I don't get the sense that we're looking to expand the commercial footprint beyond the town center and the Ridgeview area. That's kind of what I'm hearing. Is that accurate for everybody?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yes.
So.
Okay, so I think so and what you just said, I just want to talk once again. Okay, town center, if you want to say on the south side of SR 92, we pretty well have everything zoned. Does that make sense? Zoned and spoken for. I'm not sure there's anything really that can change because like I said, the open pieces are owned by the city. We've had a lot of residents saying they, whatever they want on that city parcel. You know what I mean? And I'm talking directly across over here. Now we're talking over in the Highland Mains. Highland Mains has approved site plan for their commercial units. They own all the other commercial buildings except for Quick Quack Car Wash and CVS. Then they own and actually where Little India's at, they own their building. And so they own all the other buildings. Their site plan has office on it. There's no other way in their development that there's any mixed use. Does that make sense? So we can talk about it, but there's nothing else there. And so I'm not, Chris, you brought up, okay, now we can expand that to the homes. That's where I heard Brittany say, well, that's property owners. And I've heard others say, okay, where's your rights at? Do I have a right to go put commercial in my neighborhood? Can I go and, in a sense, can I go do whatever I want on my property, or are there certain zoning regulations on what you have in place? And that's.
But that is our role. Zoning
Correct.
is our role.
That's right.
And the vision, and the general plan vision that we believe we want for Highland is our role. So I'm the first to champion the property rights big time, but it has to be within the zoning, and that has to be within a vision of where the general plan is going. I'm a real advocate of the general plan. I mean, that is the general plan. If we make an exception, we better have a long list of reasons why we're making an exception to the
So how about we have about 6 homes on Alpine Highway, and I'm just trying, we have 6 homes on Alpine Highway by the White Church. It's right by Highland Mains.
Yeah.
Are we saying we want to keep that residential as a zone, Or are we saying that we're flexible if they start to look at that as commercial and that whole block is Highland Main? I'm just saying, that's kind of what you were saying, Chris.
Yeah.
I just need to know, is that what we're signaling there, that area? Or are we signaling, no, the neighborhood now going to the west, we're also signaling that we'd be interested if they came, because that's important as what we're talking about. Or are we going, no, where we have our commercial corridor in the Highland Mains development and over here in Town Center and Ridgeview, that's what we're talking about, our town center.
That's a good clarification, Mayor, yeah.
I think if we allow that, we're going to be taken away from Highland Mains and from the city center over time.
If we allow what, like commercial?
The commercial
use
down
or-
SR
Yeah.
92.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I think we've identified what our commercial
Okay.
footprint is
Yeah, yeah.
today.
Yeah.
Like, I don't
And
think
it
there's.
doesn't include those 5 houses.
Yeah, we don't want to extend it, because
Okay.
let's see if we can occupy
You
it.
all
Were you talking about commercial or were you talking about some kind of smaller lot residential?
Smaller lot residential or your mixed use? Because I'm just trying to feather it, because you keep hearing about we want to do mixed use. So are we talking
Put
mixed
it
use?
in another sort of terms. I think, these different areas of the town center, they're all kind of zoned a little bit differently. They all have their different flavors, right? Some are exclusively commercial, some are exclusively residential, some are mixed use maybe. How would the group feel about kind of applying a mixed use to all of it?
That's what I'm inclined to move towards.
To kind of give the market the flexibility it needs to do what it needs to do and activate this space. Right? If the Macy's strip mall at some point became less profitable and tenants were hard to fill, maybe a mixed-use model might be better. I don't know. That's getting into the weeds a little bit, right? But I think having
I'm trying to nail down and go, are we just, this is we're done? Or are you talking, because I've heard both, I've heard some saying, no, don't do anything, and I've heard others saying, hey, we're trying to find a mixed-use element. Are we done, or are we trying to find a mixed-use element in the general plan?
Or do we zone it mixed use?
Element or
Let the market
flexibility?
dictate, Let a developer,
Within our.
with his data, come in and say. no,
Have the
this is-
flexibility of it.
Yeah.
Not necessarily say where it's going.
But
just
how do you
have
do
the
that in the general
flexibility.
plan?
You can do that.
We'd give, typically we have like a future land use mixed use designation. We're thinking of applying that to Longhorn for the reasons we've talked about, not mixed use, the senior housing type stuff. But I think for maybe a concrete example, we've heard from 10700 that they're having a hard time filling those office spaces there. Highland Mains has 2 large offices planned to go behind it. If they came back in, say we adopt some kind of mixed use, if they came back in and said, we can't build those offices because we're built out of commercial and there's no one who wants to live, to work there, can we convert that into similarly sized condo units? Toscana Part the second on the other side of Highland Mains. And I'm not asking for a decision like, yes, you'd approve that, but if we're applying mixed use, is that what we're kind of thinking of? We would allow that flexibility for them to ask for that? Or are we saying, no, we're good, we've got it planned out, just leave it
But
as
mixed use gives us that flexibility, is that right?
you're signaling to the property owner what they can do with it. And right now you've got a good plan, we like it a lot, that's what you get. Don't really come and ask us for more. If you do something in your general plan that says maybe mixed use in here, then they might come back how many meetings did we have with Apple Creek back in
But
the
to
day?
me, that allows flexibility.
Asking for something else.
So those who weren't here, Apple Creek came in as an apartment complex. That's what they started out as.
121 apartments.
Yeah, and then they kept on doing more of a Toscana. And now we see what they've got, and we see they're struggling, and I don't know if it's their product or what's going on, but they're struggling over there. But we need to know, I think we need, for Highland Mains, like you said, they have office. We just have to say, are we flexible? I will tell you, Toscana, we have good people that move in there. But the council and the planning commission that was there sure took a beating when it happened. Just be aware, you're gonna have public come in. Don't think there won't be public. And so.
Do like a mixed use overlay, and only certain
Yeah,
areas.
the details we could do that. It's more of just the concept of, are we talking, town center is commercial or is town center mixed use? And if you're saying it's mixed use, that means someone might come in and say, you said mixed use, that means we have residential units in there as well. Because otherwise it's not mixed use.
I will tell you, right, you say mixed use, I guarantee over by,
Someone will ask it.
they will have mixed use in that concept. They won't move fast. If I was them, I'd be here in 2 weeks, but they'll be here within a year. I'm just saying, we signal because there's other things at play going on. And there will be other things open up in that area, and there will be mixed use, and you will have a Toscana concept. Is that what you want?
So, yeah, that's the question. Is that a bad thing? Does that help the commercial element of?
And does it help affordable housing? Is that one of our modern income
and best
housing?
practice would point to that one would help with affordable housing to some degree.
People can walk.
And it would also help add rooftops within walking distance to businesses, so.
It's just a bad thing if the council would not approve it. I don't want, as the planner, to have 50 developers say, you said mixed use, I'm gonna apply for a rezone, and it just is gonna cause a lot of turmoil, a lot of residents come in, it's very contentious, and the answer is just going to be no constantly. If the council and planning commission are in favor of that, in terms of you actually do want to entertain that, great.
Then we have
But
to-
don't say that if that's not gonna happen.
Rob,
It's
we're not
kind
here to
of-
make your job easier.
I'm not asking to make my job easy. Everyone wants to know what they can do with their property. So if you say mixed use, they're going to want to do it. You're going to get a concept that will be, I want to put in a 3-story residential complex there. If you don't say mixed use, then we have what we have, and that's great.
My 2 cents were definitely from the peanut gallery. I'm not even thinking as prescriptive and as specific as a lot of the things that we're talking about. It's more just using Longhorn as a case in point. I would rather have the higher density here than in Longhorn. So that's really my point. I'm not saying that we need to, take this house and turn it into, bottle store or anything. I'm just saying, just in general terms, if we make a mistake with the high density, let's do that here, rather than have it be. No, just.
Chris, I agree with exactly what you're saying. You're actually probably making the better point, going, we know that the easier sell to the residents will be by Highland Names than it will be on Longhorn.
That's exactly right.
I mean, if you're really, Scott, I was really surprised on the Ridgeview. I thought we were going to have tons of residents come in, but some of it was removed. It wasn't in their backyard, but we didn't have as many coming in. I think they could see, now, there were some things hands were a little bit tied by the state. But I'm trying to like I'm picking on you tonight. Because it worked out great. We've had some.
Let's just talk about Ridgeview just briefly, and I'll throw in my together. So I think, first of all, we need to stop saying affordable housing, because there isn't affordable housing in Highland, unfortunately. So this 10700 was presented as affordable housing. Some of those units over there, those small lots in the white units, $1 million, right? Okay, so is that affordable? I don't know. So on Ridgeview was a compromise, and I think it was sold because originally in the plan that was approved by the state legislature, there was 1,189 units with apartment buildings in there. And we worked together, and there's 689 units, and there's a lot of good people living there, but it's only half as dense as it could have been. And so that was a compromise, and I think we always have to make compromise. We want more housing, we want all of this, but at the same time, I think we just need to be able to say what is possible, but I think we've got to be careful saying affordable, because and our representatives here, because they talk about on the state affordable, but if you come in and a developer builds $1 million homes on a postage stamp lot, is that affordable? I don't know.
Well, I understand also affordable for Highland is like 800 something, because
Right.
it's affordable in each town for what their average or whatever there is, and Highland's affordable housing is only affordable for some reason.
I just saw a study that Utah ranks 4th in the nation for young adults purchasing homes. 4th.
Purchasing?
Yes, purchasing. And yet it's my biggest fear is my grandchildren being able to afford a home. My children all have a home. My grandchildren, 2 of them out of 18 have a home. Those 16 are renting, and I don't want them to rent the rest of their lives. So to me, affordable housing is important for my grandchildren. But the bottom line is, I was flabbergasted that Utah's number 4.
Well, maybe it's not as bad as we're told. Who knows?
So Scott and Brittany, what, as you see over in the
I just
Highland
heard
Mains
it.
area, you see that staying more as that office commercial, or is there do you say, hey, I see this mixed use is having some traction there, or what do you think?
Well, I think mixed use will have traction.
You said it would have traction?
I think mixed use would have traction because they come in and say, hey, I mean, how many empty offices do we have in the town center? And that's the problem, and mixed use usually means high density housing. And so, if that's what we want, that's fine, if we need it, things, but I think we just need to be real transparent what that means, right?
Yeah, what does our future mayor think?
You are the future mayor.
You are the future mayor.
Very uncomfortable with that right now. Now there's too much pressure right
I
now.
just texted her. She was running.
I think you're right. I think that as soon as you zone it mixed use, that's what's going to happen, and it's going to be higher density, and I think we have to decide what that's gonna look like, because when we say higher density, it's gonna be this negotiation of how many units per acre, and I think we need to have an understanding as to what would be acceptable and what wouldn't be.
Height restriction.
Is that kind of, I mean, is everyone kind of on the same thing that we'd probably be, we're not saying yes to mixed use exactly there, but there's some showing of some flexibility that might, we think town center is where ours, and I think our residents would be okay. I'm going, as a resident, okay, we're getting some pushback that we need to have some affordable housing. This is the area probably to look at it. And I think, Chris, you hit it right on. They're really not favorable down at Longhorn, but they're more favorable because it's our town center.
So as an example, and we can't go in, but if we had a magic wand, if we could take that awesome park and have that be part of the town center, I mean, that would be awesome, because then people would be playing with the kids, going to have a snack, buying drinks, dropping stuff off at FedEx, running errands, but we just have to deal with what we have presently. But that type of notion or concept of having reasons for people to congregate and get together.
That was the original town center, I brought this up before, is there at Toscana. They were supposed to have hair salons, they were supposed to have insurance offices, everything was supposed to be on that bottom, and however, our commercial was supposed to be surrounding our city center. That's why, and we saw that, as we heard earlier, it did not succeed. That was not a concept. Now, the one that grabbed a hold of it were Burt Brothers Tires. Ace saw that. We had Ace kind of grab a hold of that. Okay, I'll kind of come back in. Now, what's nice, Burt Brothers is busy. They are very busy, but they probably are busy because of our zoning, that we have not allowed other zoning areas where they can get another tire center, and so their competition is very low, and they are very busy. Their business has almost tripled since they've come on as well, maybe in 4 times what. And I think a lot of you know I have my office there. I've been there for 13 years. I mean, I have a pretty good feel what's going there. But yeah, you're right. Our office building in front of us, the WPI has, which we just had that new salon coming, they have struggled to fill that office space. And so office isn't, I'm not quite sure. I have empty office space that kind of gets filled up and then goes back out right by me, just even single offices. So
I'm good with mixed use. That's kind of my preference, although I think that we should plan on, as a reasonably high priority, once the general plan is approved, to come in and do the detailed policy work of what that overlay looks like, so that we minimize some of that ambiguity for folks.
Did that help, Rob?
No.
It'll add on to the project list.
So it keeps you employed.
I think we've kind of narrowed down that we feel like there's probably, if there's gonna be mixed use anywhere, we see it by that Highland Mains. If the property owner is interested, if they want to move forward with their office, if not, I think it sounds what we're hearing is they're at least open to the concept, so.
I don't know if this is in general knowledge, but I thought the church up there wanted to sell the property west of it to be part of the Highland Mains.
What do we want to say, Rob?
There are discussions, and I think they're public possibility, and kind of what that would involve. And I've told them, well, the council would want to see what you want to put back there before, because it's all residential right now on the church property.
So it appears the church, their baseball diamond is willing to sell off part of that parcel. That Highland Mains is really probably one of the only property owners that could get to that. And I believe they might be under contract. So they'd have to come in with a new concept. That's why I've been asking, is I assumed they have the office sooner versus later.
They were talking at one point about some sort of care center, weren't they? And
That
one
might
of
be.
the concerns was the access through the city was going to have to go through all of the parking lot of Highland Mains to get to it.
Yes.
And isn't that 11-200 that we just made a residential road up there?
It doesn't actually really connect up there.
It doesn't connect to where they're to be at. They still have to come all off the Highland Mains entrances.
Yeah, it doesn't connect north, and it doesn't connect, there's a little stub street right off of Highland Mains, and it's walled off.
But if they develop that, it would have to.
No, it's not the whole,
It's not the parking
there's two
lot.
baseball diamonds there,
Oh,
only
okay.
doing one baseball diamond.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if the church would let them use their parking lot, but I would bet not.
I bet not too.
We've crossed the hour. So I think we'll talk about moderate income housing next time.
Well, no, but to be honest, what we just talked about, that mixed use, probably is
It
really
is
our,
moderate income housing.
that is really kind of what we'd be talking for moderate income housing.
Yeah, and so I think we'll talk more about this next round, so. But this was a really good discussion tonight, and I think we got some clarity on this, so. Unless there's any final comments, I'll turn it off over to Mayor.
Is there anything else that staff has that needs to be presented while we're all here? And I'll be open for a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
I have Ron that made the motion, I have Deborah that second. And do we need a roll call?
No, we can actually just adjourn the meeting. We don't need to have a roll call or a motion.
We have to say aye, not
No,
aye.
you can just say we're done.